For this video lecture, we will be looking at the roles and responsibilities of people involved in organising and delivering sports events. The intentions of the video lecture are to give you an awareness so you will be able to describe the roles and responsibilities involved in the planning and delivering of sports events in preparation for planning and delivering your own sports event as a group. And with this, if you're looking at going beyond the minimal criteria, you will need to provide an explanation which details the roles and responsibilities involved in the planning and delivery of a sports event for particular roles and responsibilities selected. In doing this, the important thing is for you to judge, and you'll need to make a clear judgment in order to marry up the appropriate responsibility for the selected roles which are involved in planning and delivering sports events. So as we can see on the image now, we have the roles on the left and the responsibilities on the right. Throughout this, it is important to be very much aware of the role first and foremost that we'll be focusing on, and we will look at each of the roles in turn. And for each of the roles, we will be looking at embedding the correct or most appropriate responsibility to the role which we have described and explained, or as we are describing and explaining within our assignment. Firstly, we will look at chairperson as a role. Now, this is a role which we need to look at. However, for your assessment, you will not be able to describe and explain chairperson. I've provided a description in the red, as we can see here, of what a chairperson is. It's important for you to have an understanding of this, and it would be very good at this point for you to pause the video and have a read of the red text. Underneath, in the blue, we have a responsibility. Now, this is not a selected responsibility from the list which you have to choose from, so it is not a case where you can copy and paste this. They have just formed a description of a responsibility for a chairperson. This is how you might produce your role and responsibility descriptions and explanations if you were to separate them. However, here we have the same description and explanation content which I have integrated, or for another term, collectively described and explained, which, as you can see by the different changes in the colour of the red text here to the blue text, back to the red and the blue, there you can see where I'm talking about the role or the responsibility specifically. So it might be a good point within the space that you have within your portfolio for the selected roles and the marrying up responsibilities for those roles that you select, for you to collectively or combine and merge your description and explanation together. But it is important to be very clear what you are describing and explaining. It is probably good practice to do this as opposed to separate your role and responsibility description and explanation, particularly if you are going for the merit criteria in explaining. So the first role which we are looking at is coordinator. We will need a coordinator for your group, which we will have possibly already democratically elected. The coordinator has 3 points which we can look at. So if you're looking at a description, you could use these as a base to form your description. They would very much be looking at the strategic planning and organising, working closely with a chairperson. It might be that the coordinator is in fact the manager of a group or the group leader. So they would need to line manage a group of people and delegate tasks accordingly. So we can certainly see here we might have a coordinator, this young lady here, who might be leading a group meeting and giving an update or a briefing to different people. And we might well have a group of people here, or certainly when we looked at the Olympics, we would have a group of people who were in charge of ensuring safety within for the spectators, possibly doing a number of different roles relating to the participants and the Olympic athletes themselves, and ensuring that the running of the event went as required. It's likely that each team of volunteers would have had a coordinator in terms of their line manager and delegating responsibilities. As we look at responsibilities of a coordinator, we've got possibilities here of logistics, which is the timing of things, which might be the schedule, setting the schedule for an event in terms of what time do the participants need to arrive, what time do the leaders need to arrive, who's in charge of doing what on the day, etc. Or we might have liaison. Liaison is where you would liaise or communicate with, for example, the secretary that would be working with you, maybe the chairperson above or that you're working for. It might well be that you are liaising with a number of different team managers for groups of football teams or school PE teachers who are bringing teams to take part in an event. You might need to liaise with them, might be through your chairperson or directly. The second role we will look at is a secretary. Again, similar to the coordinator, we should have already elected a secretary, or the coordinator might have selected somebody to be a secretary. Secretaries are responsible largely for administrative correspondence. They would keep track of all the paperwork in terms of minutes of meetings, who's doing what's been delegated to who from the coordinator, and they would very much support the coordinator and possibly the chairperson within that and keeping track of things. They might well assist other people in the group as well in keeping their paperwork in order, and that might well come within assisting other roles. Possible responsibilities: largely the secretary will liaise, again, so liaison, liaising with the coordinator, liaising very much with different people that have been asked to carry out roles, which we'll come across later on. For instance, finance people, publicity, marketing, specialist coaches, asking them for session plans or risk assessments. And a secretary's job is very much to chase after and liaise with those people. What we'll look at is finance officer. This is typically somebody who is considered as a treasurer, or they manage the budget. Not all sports events that we will look at will require one of these, but it's very much important to be aware of. So their possible responsibilities will be raising finances, figuring out how we can raise money to carry out certain things or provide certain things for the event, and they will need to maintain accurate records, balance sheets, profit loss, etc. Depending on the type of event, that's very much an important role. The next role we'll look at is a publicity officer. Generally, they will generate publicity and manage the publicity, and by that would be looking at bringing in the press, either local radio or the local newspaper, and possibly using our social media forums such as our college Facebook site here, or even this image was taken from a local newspaper from a previous sports event. So they would have very much a responsibility of publicity, so not too far a stretch in order to find the responsibility here, and this would be liaising with local media and the press in order to arrange for them to come in to publicise the event after it's taken place or promote the event taking place. Here we will look at a marketing officer. Very similar in ways to a publicity officer. Is sometimes considered that publicity is something which falls within marketing. The sayings of publicity, you get free publicity. Marketing is generally where we look at advertising and promotional direction, which is typically paid for by companies. They would pay and have a marketing budget. So we would look at this person organising market research and working with people who can carry out marketing to best advertise the possible event that we might put on. And again, marketing would probably be our number one responsibility for a marketing officer, to effectively market an event, but we might have some responsibility for raising finances in order to market an event, depending on the cost of how we market an event, whether we have leaflets or flyers, or whether we, for instance, pay for a radio advertisement. There would be cost associated with that for any type of event. A steward is another role which is important for the planning and certainly the delivery of event. This takes place largely on the day of the event. Certainly stewards would need a briefing, very much ensuring safety during the delivery. We have marshals here as part of a World Rally Championship race. They would be liaising in terms of ensuring the track is free and safe for the drivers to use, and certainly no spectators there on the track. But they would look after the drivers' needs as well as the safety elements of the participants. The spectators. Largely here we see football stewards. They are very much there for the safety again of the players and of the spectators, and can be a useful point of reference. They should be very visible and knowledgeable and courteous for all. Their possible responsibilities could be health and safety, as we've just mentioned, the safety of spectators and participants, and very much could be a case of liaison. They would probably need to be liaising with coordinators or line managers in terms of what they need to do in certain situations, but this is very much a role which would be carried out on the day of the event and not necessarily too much in the planning of the event, although it needs to be planned for in terms of who would carry out this role. The final role that we look at is again in somebody who would be involved on the day of delivery. They would have an important job in terms of the planning. They would very much plan certain sports sessions or skill-based sessions, or even officiate if we have a knockout competition, for example, or a league competition. They would be very knowledgeable in a specialist area in order to instruct, teach or train participants and lead them. And it is important that they would be responsible for the equipment that they use and the area that they use. Certainly carrying out risk assessments beforehand in the planning stages are important, and they would be largely responsible for the health and safety of their athletes, themselves and other people in the area that is being used for the specialist sports-based event that might be taking place, whether it's a skills-based session or a coaching session of some sort. So as we look back at these different roles and responsibilities, if we just discard chairperson for now, if we're looking at coordinator, secretary, finance officer, publicity officer, marketing officer, steward and specialist coach, we should be very much aware now in order to provide some detail of what the role is, and in order to certainly link the responsibility, we should probably be looking pretty much across and maybe find a corresponding responsibility for a role. But in terms of the role within your description and explanation, it would be very important in order to be indicating when this person or when this role would certainly be carrying out certain things. So marketing would be carried out before an event, publicity would need to prepare before an event, but they would be involved during the event, liaising with the local press in order to get the appropriate images and publicity from the event. Finance officer and secretary might be very much involved before the event in the planning stages, as would the coordinator all the way throughout the planning and the delivery, but we might have people taking up more specialist coach or stewards and supporting roles during delivery if they have carried out any of the other more admin based tasks in the planning stages. Okay, so if we just come back around to what the intentions were for this video lecture, we should find now that we are able to provide an effective and hopefully an integrated description and explanation of the selected role with a married up responsibility for 4 different roles of people involved in planning and delivering sports events.